So I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is a blue-collar working class city, which I still love. Yeah, I think a lot of my views on money come from there. Like everybody's hardworking, especially in those days, just barely getting by probably. It wasn't a very rich town back in the 90s. So then we moved to North Carolina for when I was in eighth grade, so late 90s. And then I went to high school and college in North Carolina, went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which again, a great top 30 school, but then I was paying $5,000 a year because I was in state. So that's another bit of luck that I was in a state that had really good in-state schools. And the UNC computer science program was like the first in the nation, and it was an excellent computer science department. So again, I got to just have a little bit of student loans that I paid off over the following decade, but they were very low monthly payments. So then my junior year at UNC, I went to Scotland to do a year study abroad. And again, I did a year because it was the same price as a year at Chapel Hill, whereas if I'd done 6 months or a summer, it would have been extortionate. But then it was a year, and that was just like standard Chapel Hill prices. So that's why I chose to do that. And then, yeah, halfway through there, I met my future wife and then went back to the States for 1 year to graduate. And then after I graduated, I moved back to Scotland. So then we were in Scotland until 2007. Then we did a 3-month ski trip because we sold our houses and belongings, quit our jobs, and moved back to the States and did a ski trip for 3 months. Because again, I didn't know about FI then, but I knew I wanted to use my money for freedom, I guess. And then, yeah, we're in the States for probably 7 years. And then we've been back in Scotland probably since 2014 or something. So it's been a while now.
That's quite a trajectory. And I share the UNC Chapel Hill piece of luck because I went to med school there and it cost $500 a semester when I started med school in the 90s. So I exited med school with no debt. It was incredible. It's no longer the same, but we share the go Tar Heels, right? Problem is I went to Duke undergrad, so I'm a bit conflicted. So at any rate, you had this bouncing around trajectory, you met your wife, and you ended up back in Vermont. You were being hyper frugal, hyper saving. I want to know kind of what was your savings rate, and did this focus on money in your 20s to reach FI at 34, did it have any detrimental effects on you and or your relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So before I dive into that, it's also good to just mention the other bit of luck of moving from country to country allowed me to level out my salaries a lot more than I would have if I stayed put. Because I would put in my resignation, say that I'm moving to the States. Nobody would be mad about that. But then they'd ask me to stay on remotely and they'd bump my salary by 25, 50%. And I did that a couple times. And that was a huge driver of upping my income. And again, that was just dumb luck. But by the time we got to Vermont, I was full force into saving for FI, and just the way it worked out as far as where my wife's job was, because she already had a job, and then where I wanted to get a job, I wanted to get a job at a nice university that's there because I wanted to get a free master's degree, which I ended up doing. So the distance between those was like over an hour, so it was like an hour and a half. So we ended up living in the middle of nowhere right in between so that we'd each have a 45-minute commute. So by this stage, I was so obsessed with getting to FI as quickly as possible that our isolation in that area just compounded into probably the darkest point of our whole entire savings for FI. Because at that stage, I was probably saving 80% of my income, I think, at least. It was 80 plus because I was earning a good software developer salary, but I was living in the middle of nowhere. Our mortgage was 581, I think, if the number sticks in my head. We were splitting it. So this is before when I was saving for FI. So we were like just splitting all our essential expenses. Our essential expenses were nothing because we were just in the middle of nowhere in Vermont doing not much. We would have like a $299 annual ski pass to Pico Mountain. So that was like $299 for the year. And that would be all our weekends, just go and skiing and stuff. So yeah, I got up over 80%. But I think the isolation was more the problem than the actual like depriving myself of things, because the isolation just meant that there wasn't that much that I could do. So I ended up slowly getting into sort of a depression. And I recount this story, I forget it somewhere on my blog, but I just remember skiing one time with friends and being like depressed. And I'm like, well, why am I spending this money to ski? Because I was like at some other mountain where I had to pay for the lift ticket. I was like, why am I spending this money to ski when I could be at home just saving money or studying? Because I was getting my master's at the time, and I could just be at home studying and then I'll just save all that money. So it got to a point where I was like not doing social things to save money. And that was a mistake. And it wasn't until maybe a year or two of that really till Jill, my wife, was like, look, you're not happy. We're not happy. What are we doing? Let's move out of this place and get closer to family. And that's when we moved back to Scotland and sort of snapped me out of that hyper saving mode. So I definitely took it too far. I cut out everything, pretty much any discretionary spending, but that definitely got us to those 80 and close to 90% savings rate at some point. But yeah, that wasn't worth it. That was too far.
Yeah, it sounds like you got addicted. And it sounds like you were a savings addict in a way, and your wife helped you recover, and she recognized the problem that you couldn't see. So was it causing problems in your relationship, or was she helping monitor this sort of obsession with savings and for freedom, I guess is the reason. But it got to a very dark place, and maybe a lot of people don't know that, and that can happen. And your wife brought you out of it. What was it like for her, this experience of your hyper-frugalism?
I can't imagine how miserable it was for her, because here she is in a foreign country, in the middle of nowhere in the foreign country, with a husband that either wants to write about money, study, well, I didn't want to study, but I had to study, and or just sit around and not do anything. So I think it was probably a rougher time for her, because I didn't realize it, to be honest. I think that's the way sort of depression works. It just sort of creeps up on you, I guess. So it was probably worse for her, just because, yeah, she was just stuck in the middle of nowhere with somebody that really didn't want to do anything and wasn't happy about it. So yeah, she absolutely snapped me out of it. And yeah, we decided then to just move back to Scotland, and it was definitely a good move.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about my spouse. It's hard to self-monitor, and the mental health journey of FI is a significant portion of the journey, with its ups and its downs. And our late starters hit the depths of depression potentially like maybe I did, when we wake up and realize I'm 50, nobody's taking care of me. I don't even know what a net worth is, and I've got to be able to take care of myself in retirement. Shame, remorse, regret, grief, depression. It's a very emotional journey. Money is emotional, and the journey is emotional. And I really appreciate your sharing these difficulties that a lot of people may not have known you had.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure it's more prevalent than people realize, because it is, especially for people with my sort of mindset, it is easy to get obsessed with it. And then every penny, like I was making coffee this morning, and I just remember a time where my wife bought me an extra V60 cone, like the things that you make pour over coffee with. And I already had one, and she bought an extra one. And I was like, I started stressing about the extra filters that I'd have to buy for it. And looking back on it, it's just absolutely insane. But when you're trying to save every single penny, then that's the thoughts that you have. And they're so counterproductive. And one of the biggest joys of being in the position we are now financially is that I've just let go of all of that. And I realize that I can live the fullest middle-class lifestyle that I'm used to, that I'm not going to be out buying fancy sports cars or booking flights on private jets that are going to in any way jeopardize our ability to spend. So I can just live completely freely in this lifestyle that I've grown up in and not question anything. And that's been one of the biggest benefits of having more than enough, that more than my target. And it's just been to realize that those like super tiny expenses are so insignificant. And that's something I talked about in my recent podcast that I put out, is doing a college calculation in my mind, because my brain is still 20 and I'm still back in Chapel Hill, and a $10 burrito is something to question, because I could probably get a $5 6-inch sub at Subway or something instead. So am I going to meet my friends for burritos when I know I'm going to spend 10 or 15 bucks? So my brain's still there, but my net worth is drastically different. So the biggest thing to get over that over the years has been taking that $10 expense, dividing it by my net worth, and then multiplying that number by my net worth now, and realizing that, oh, wow, okay, $10 back then is equivalent to thousands of dollars now, which is insane. So I should not think twice about a $10 expense now, because that's equivalent of like a few pennies back in the day. It's really hard to reprogram your brain after so long of obsessing about something. But yeah, just realizing those insignificant expenses has been a breath of fresh air to my life.
Yeah, it's kind of like the different phases of FI. You're super frugal, you are a saver, and it's just hard to turn that off when you finally reach financial independence, and it could take you to a dark place. So I appreciate you being so transparent about it, and I think it probably resonated with a lot of people.
I am so excited to announce our new partnership at Catching Up to FI with Monarch. Monarch is a comprehensive financial tool to monitor your financial health and life. I have been using Monarch for 3 years to track my spending, net worth, budget, savings goals, and more. I am not a spreadsheet nerd, and without Monarch's robust, intuitive tools and user interface, this process would have seemed impossible. I was recently also able to seamlessly share my data with our new flat fee financial planner for a retirement readiness checkup when I turned 60. He uses Monarch with all of his clients. After our analysis, I was shocked to find out that we were financially independent 3 years before I thought we would be. You can't manage what you don't measure. Using Monarch was critical in this review and planning process. It remains important in monitoring my ongoing financial health. Thanks to Monarch, all of our podcast listeners and community members have access to a 50% discount off their first year subscription. Simply follow the link below and use the discount code CatchingUp50 at checkout. I am proud to say that my sons are the first to use the code to join the Monarch family. I encourage you to share this link and code with family and friends this holiday season who need or want to take back their money and grow their wealth. I cannot think of a better, more generous, or valuable gift or resolution. Happy holidays from all of us at Catching Up to 5.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. And our editor is Fritz Brizard. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, Jackie, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community and we hope you love us back. If you would like to support the show and our mission to help late starters, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to make a donation. The link is in the show notes and on the website.
Check out the show notes for resources mentioned in today's show. Also, head on over to our website at catchinguptofy.com and check out our vetted resources, partners, and affiliates for discounts and their services because we love sharing great deals.
Please share the show with others and head on over to our Facebook community to help us grow. If you prefer video, head on over to YouTube and watch the show there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to 5. We would appreciate it if you could also leave us a 5-star review to help our message reach others.
And while we are financial educators that love to teach, remember that our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
So, Jackie, we'll see our audience next time on Catching Up to 5. Cheers.